Hold on a second. Are the Padres going to make the playoffs?
You are Locked On MLB. Your daily MLB podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello, baseball fans, and welcome to Locked On MLB, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. This is the daily podcast. We talk about all the Major League Baseball. I am your host, Paul Francis Sullivan. If you don't believe me, hey, there's my lower third. You can call me Sully. I am an Emmy-nominated television producer who has been a baseball podcaster for well over a decade now, and this is wrapping up my fifth full season here at the Locked On Podcast Network. Can you believe it's been 5 seasons I've been here? I can't believe it. But here I am. You can follow us at Locked On MLB Pods on Twitter or on Instagram. I'm your pal Sully. I'm at Sully Baseball on Twitter, Sully Baseball Podcast on Instagram. And please subscribe to our YouTube channel. We're trying to get 1 billion followers, and the season is winding down. Lots to talk about. On this, which is a Saturday edition, that's right, you get 6 brand new episodes this week. And I return the savings back to you. You know, this is the fun time to do a lot of this because we got pennant race stuff and we got all sorts of a lot of big news, strange news. The American League West is all knotted up right now. The A's gave a weird gift to departing Miguel Cabrera, and we say goodbye to a friend of the podcast and a friend to many people. Wonderful baseball career of Sean Doolittle. First and foremost, at the beginning of the year, I picked the San Diego Padres to go to the World Series. I like their team. I like their manager. They were 3 wins away from winning the World Series last year, and they added Xander Bogaerts. They're going to have Juan Soto for a full season. I really liked what they were going to be doing. And they, for the most part of this year, absolutely and positively wet the bed. It was just they were just a really mediocre. They weren't bad. They just were not. The pieces weren't fitting together, and there's a lot of talk of whether or not Bob Melvin should lose his job. I mean, when you have Machado and Bogaerts and Soto and Darvish and Hader, and you're gonna have a Cy Young winning season from Blake Snell. Oh my! I mean, that seems like easily 90 wins. And when you look at the fact that there's such an incredible logjam in the National League wild card, you think, well, obviously the Padres are going to be one of those teams, right? And you take a look at how they've been playing for a good chunk of this year. I'm going over to baseballreference.com, the single greatest website in the history of the planet Earth. And they were, 10 games under 500 in early September. They got off to an okay start. I mean, they were barely above 500 in April. We were like, okay, starting off slowly. Then they had a losing May. They had a losing June. They had a good July, but they had a rotten August. And they just looked like, okay, they're dead. They're dead from the neck up. And, they were going through as recently as the 10th day of September. They were 10 games under 500. No, as recent as the 12th, there were 10 games under 500. Then they won the game in Los Angeles. All right. Then they went to Oakland. I actually was at a couple of the games in Oakland, and they beat up the A's. Okay, fine. Then they swept the Rockies. All right, fine. All right. And you look up, and they won 8 of their last 10 games. But they're beating up tomato cans. It's the end of the year, right? But here's the deal. The other teams all can't get out of their own way. Now, I'm just going to go right here. I'm going to go right to when they were 10 when they lost their last game, which was on September 12th. So it's been 10 days since they've lost a freaking game. And I'm going to go here. I'm going to the baseballreference.com site right here. And they since then, they've been 8-0, and that includes Friday's game. Friday's wild, weird game with St. Louis, of which Manny Machado hit two giant home runs, including a 2-run home run to give them the lead for good. Now the Padres are 8-0 in that stretch. The Cubs, one of the teams they're chasing for the wild card, they're 2-6. The Giants, one of the teams they're chasing for the wild card, they're 3-6 in that same stretch. The Reds, one of the teams they're chasing that, they're 4-5, including a stupid game against the Pittsburgh Pirates, which included an absolute tremendous meltdown from the bullpen. Miami is 5-4, not bad, but not great. And the Pirates in that same stretch, by the way, the Pirates are out of it, but they're 6-3, and they have been making life hell for contenders. Okay, Arizona's been good. They've been 6-2, and I'm sure Miller Thomas is happy about that. But the Padres are on this great roll, and the other teams have let them get back in it. Now, there's only about 7 or 8 games left, and the Padres are 4 games back. Okay, it's still a pretty steep hill for them to climb. But the way they've been winning and the way the other teams have been losing, it's not inconceivable that the Rockies could win a couple of games against the Cubs, that the Marlins could stub their toe because they got their doors blown off by Milwaukee tonight. Milwaukee is trying to clinch the Central with one more win that can do that. And, some of the other teams, I mean, the Giants have been sputtering. They won tonight, but they've been sputtering. It's just bizarre that the Padres have been allowed to, rise up. Remember I said there's no wrong time to go on an 8 or 9 game winning streak. Well, they're on a 9-game winning streak right now. And, yikes. This is an interesting time for the San Diego Padres. And it kind of feels like it's mirroring what the Colorado Rockies did in 2007 when they reached at this point of the year, and they had a winning record, but they would fall, and they were kind of alongside the Dodgers. And it was really, you had the Mets and the Phillies and the Diamondbacks and the Padres. And then you had, who was the Central? It was the Cubbies. And so you had a bunch of teams up at the top there. The Rockies were an absolute afterthought, and they won this unbelievable winning streak to end the season, force game 163, of which they beat the Rockies, and then ultimately they beat the Padres, and ultimately the Rockies went on to sweep the Phillies and the Diamondbacks and go to the World Series. This Padres team is starting to feel a little bit like that, like they're getting on that kind of a run. I remember vividly when that was happening with the Rockies. There was a sense of, oh man, well, better, at least they're ending the season on a flourish. And it didn't end. And they kept leapfrogging teams. They leapfrogged over the Dodgers, they leapfrogged over the Mets until finally they're the last one standing. Oddly, the Rockies beating the Cubs was kind of threw a tiny bit of a wrench in the plans for the Padres to advance in the wild card chase, because if the Cubs had lost to the Rockies, then the Padres would be 3 games out of a playoff spot. And the teams they'd have to jump over would be the Giants, the Reds, the Marlins, and the Cubs, 3 teams that can't get out of their own way. It's interesting because the Padres finished the month of August at 62-73. They finished. They were at 11 games under 500 going into September, for a team that a lot of people, including yours truly, were picking to win the pennant. If they were just 1 game under 500, and which would still be incredibly disappointing for a team that was that star-studded, but if they just were 1 game under 500 going into September, and then all the other games unfolded the way that they did, they'd be a playoff team right now. And people would be terrified to be playing them. If you're in a short series, who would you rather play right now? The Cubs? The Marlins? Arizona? Would you rather play Cincinnati? San Francisco, or San Diego, knowing they're going to have Snell going game one. You got that lineup. Everything's firing on all cylinders right now. Hader closing the game out. Look at Bob Melvin got very, very smart, very, very fast. By the way, Bob Melvin was the manager of the Arizona Diamondbacks when the Rockies pulled that off. And while the Diamondbacks won the division by a single, actually, in the end, it was half a game over the Rockies, they got swept by Colorado in the National League Championship Series. But I digress. San Diego, I picked them at the beginning of the year, and lo and behold, that may not have been the worst pick in the world. By the way, I just want to go over two quick things here. Excuse me, looking down. I'm looking for my notes here. I want to just send a couple of, first of all, John Murphy Jr. and Courtstell got the trivia question correct. The Brewers lost Raleigh Fingers before the 1982 postseason. May have cost them the World Series. But Pete Ladd was the pitcher to come out of the bullpen in Raleigh Fingers' place to clinch, to date, the only World Series appearance for the Milwaukee Brewers. And I want to give a shout out to one of my listeners and an everyday Sully, Robert DeMarco. Robert DeMarco has been posting a lot on the YouTube channel, on the YouTube comment sections. Robert DeMarco is a big, big Yankee fan, and he has been saying every single day, the Yankees are not out of it. The Yankees are not out of it. And look at Robert. I hope you're wrong, but I truly admire your dedication as a fan. And we saw today, Aaron Judge had an unbelievable 3-home-run game today. Look at, I think the teams ahead of the Yankees are better than the teams ahead of the Padres right now. But Robert DeMarco, you do you, and you show your fandom. And you know what? Cheer for him to the very end. Absolute chaos is going on in the American League West, and some of the games that were the Mariners and the Rangers played a strange game. One where the Rangers held on. Rangers ran up a big 8-0 lead, and then the Mariners rallied to cut the lead in half. They never quite got the big, huge hit, and they couldn't pull in a run in the 7th and 8th. They rallied against Chapman at the end, but the Rangers wound up winning the game 8-5. Now, keep in mind, there's 7, 8 games left, and the Rangers won against the Mariners. And again, a perfect example of why you can't mark on the calendar, hey, here comes an easy win. The Astros, who were in first place going into the game on Friday, were playing the Royals with their 102 losses, and the Astros had Framber Valdez on the mound. And the Astros were down 4 runs before they even came to bat. The Royals came out swinging and took a 4-run lead in the top of the first and wound up holding on to a 7-5 victory. Now, what does that mean? That means that despite all the injuries, despite that incredible fold that they had at the beginning of September, that rancid losing streak, and the pitching staff falling apart, and the bullpen blowing tons of games, and losing Jacob deGrom, and losing Max Scherzer, here we are with about a week to go, and the Texas Rangers are in first place by themselves. Their magic number to clinch the American League West is 9. And right now they hold their own destiny in their hands. If they hang on to this, they're going to win it. And the Seattle Mariners, if they won the game today, would have been in first place by themselves, and getting them set up for a first round, basically skipping the wild card series. But because they didn't come back, they are right now, as of this recording, not a playoff team. That's how tight it is. If they rallied, they'd be in first place, but they didn't, so they're out of the playoffs, which means there is a scenario Let's say the Mariners win tomorrow, and let's say the Royals pull off another upset over the Houston Astros. If those two things happen, then the Astros would be out of the playoffs with about a week to go. It's strange times, and you can't say things like, oh, well, it's going to be an easy win. There are no easy wins right now. It's just individual games. But there's one thing that's for certain, that the geography has helped the Minnesota Twins because they're in the Central. The Twins have 82 wins. The Astros and the Mariners are both better than them in terms of their win-loss record. So is Tampa Bay by a mile. But they play in the Central. And today they played a back and forth game. It got a little sloppy at the end. But the Minnesota Twins pulled it off. And they're in it. Now, they have not won a playoff game, not a series, a game in my two sons' lifetime. Not once since my children were born have the Minnesota Twins won a playoff game. My children are in college. And if I'm not mistaken, yes, every other franchise has won at least one postseason game. I had to think about it, but yes, the Marlins won a couple of games in the COVID year, and the Mariners won last year. So every single team in baseball has won a playoff game in the lifetime of my children, who are currently college students, except the Minnesota Twins. Now, they have good pitching, and they can line up the pitching the way they want to. Now, as it turns out right now, they would play the third wildcard team. Now, right now, it would be the Astros versus the Twins. I got to give the Astros the edge there. And right now, it would be Tampa Bay versus Toronto. Tampa Bay wound up losing their game to the Blue Jays. The Blue Jays are starting to hit again. The Blue Jays, like the Padres, looked like a dead from the neck up team for most of the year, but they've been playing well recently. And they got big hits, and they're stealing bases left and right. They're dangerous. Bassett, Gosman, Ryu, Barrios, that lineup in a short series, they're dangerous. And there's no, as we pointed before, there's no super team in the American League. We're seeing how vulnerable each of the Western teams were. And the Orioles played a weird, and did I mention dumb game against Cleveland? They gave that game away. And it was a weird back and forth game, and one where Cleveland was 1 out away, and the third base, I don't think Ramirez was playing third base. I don't remember. It may have been Ramirez. I can't remember. Absolutely butchered a ball by Hicks. Yankee fans, remember Hicks? Yankee fans, you're going to Robert DeMarco, you may look up and see that the Josh Donaldson and Aaron Hicks are going to be playing in the postseason this year. Hicks hit a double that should have been a final out of the game that sent the go-ahead run to the plate in the top of the ninth. And then, with Cano pitching now in the closer role, we got a leadoff double for Cleveland, and Brandon Hyde put the go-ahead runner on base in the bottom of the ninth, and it came back to bite him in the butt after a walk-off double. Cleveland won. And look, Baltimore is going to the playoffs. We all know that. Baltimore has right now 95 wins. They have a chance. It's no longer locked in stone, but they have a chance at 100 wins. Either way, it'll be high 90s at the worst case scenario. But they're vulnerable. They're vulnerable. Every team in the American League is a tiny bit vulnerable. You can't look me in the eye and say that there's one team that has absolutely no chance. Right now, if I was a betting man, if the Astros won the division, I would still pick them just out of respect for them and because they've been there and done that. If you asked me last week, I would have said Baltimore. I don't think it's going to be the Rangers, but who knows? I don't think it's going to be Seattle, but who knows? I don't think it's going to be Minnesota, but who knows? It's not outlandish if any of those teams won. Tampa Bay scares me. Tampa Bay scares me big time in a short series, even though they've had all those injuries and everything. But I'm saying I could pick the Astros, but the Astros could miss the playoffs. I'm going to talk a little bit next week about the fact that there's a chance that we won't have the Astros, and we know we're going to not going to have the Red Sox, and we probably, sorry, Mr. DeMarco, we probably won't have the Yankees. So we'll be going into the postseason of 2023 without an obvious villain. So look at the playoffs are really going to be something because there are total coin flips going right now, and it's pretty intense. By the way, intense. Miguel Cabrera, great career. First ballot Hall of Famer, no doubt. MVP, World Series champ, Triple Crown winner. Whether or not you care about the Triple Crown or not, 3,000 hits. One of the great offensive players in Detroit Tigers history, which is saying something. Won his ring with the 2003 Florida Marlins. And it's his retirement thing. And they go around and he picks up dumb gifts. And, look at those gifts are usually ceremonial. Like, hey, Derek Jeter, here's your surfboard from the Padres. What the hell is he going to do with a surfboard? And, sometimes they'll give you a rocking chair. What am I going to do with a rocking chair? I like Fenway Park. The Red Sox usually give them like one of the numbers from the scoreboard. That's fine. Put it in your rec room. The A's gave Miguel Cabrera a bottle of wine. Look at. And apparently he's a wine collector. Okay, fine. Someone did a research saying that the bottle of wine they got was under $100. There you go, A's. You spent less than $100 on a future Hall of Famer as their gift. Last year I put aside a little bit of money each month. At the end of the year, because I'm a public school teacher, special ed teacher. And I gave my two classroom aides, who were very, very helpful the entire year. They each got an Amazon gift card worth $100 from me, and as a sense of gratitude and saying, "Hey, look, you gave me more than $100 worth of help. I appreciate it." When a public school teacher is giving his aides a more expensive gift than the a Major League Baseball team is giving a future Hall of Famer, that's just weird. And what's also weird is Miguel Cabrera, and this is not a stigma, but has had issues as an alcoholic. He's a recovering alcoholic. And, good for him. He's working hard at it and everything. Is giving him a bottle of wine the smartest thing they can do? I mean, come on. Go to Trader Joe's and buy him $100 worth of potato chips or something like that. That'll be worth more than the gift they actually got him. I want to give a shout out to someone who's a friend of the Old Sully Baseball podcast. In fact, he actually recorded the intro to it. And it's someone who I got to know a little bit about a decade ago, and someone who's had a wonderful career, Sean Doolittle, and he is hanging up his spikes. He's had some injuries over the last few years. He only pitched a handful of games last year. He hasn't pitched yet this year. And, when you're in your 30s and you start losing entire seasons to injury, it may be time to hang up the spikes. And he has become someone who was extraordinarily popular in both Oakland and in Washington, and just, impossible not to root for him. And he was a very talented pitcher, just on the field. He was a very talented pitcher. Made the All-Star team a couple of times. Was a key part he played in the postseason for 5 different times between his time in Oakland and his time in Washington. The Washington Nationals never advanced beyond the division series, despite razor thin and heartbreaking losses they had. In 2012, they were one strike away twice from winning the division series. They lost it. In 2014, they played a tight series with the Giants that included an 18-inning game at home that they lost. 2016, they lost a super razor thin series to the Dodgers, one where the winning run was at the plate in the deciding game 5, and they had a lead in game 5 of the division series in 2017, and then the Cubs rallied and wound up winning that series. I mean, it was just heartbreak after heartbreak. In 2019, they won the weird wild card game against Milwaukee Brewers, but were totally outmatched by the Dodgers, or so it seemed. The Washington Nationals rallied in Game 5 to send it to extra innings. Kendrick hit the grand slam, and Sean Doolittle came out of the bullpen to clinch the series. He got a save in the league championship series and closed out Game 6 of the World Series as well. Got a World Series ring for his troubles. I can also attest he's a wonderfully nice person. He followed my old podcast, was a guest on my old podcast. I got to meet him several times, and I became good friends with his wife, Erin, who is, the two of them are just two wonderfully charitable, good, decent, and very funny people. Erin's been a guest on my podcast many times as well. And I actually was a guest on a podcast that she hosted. Very briefly had me on as a guest there, and she was a guest on my 1000th podcast for the Old Sully Baseball Show, which we did as a live studio show. He's done a lot of, he's very funny, he's very charming, he's very affable. There's a wonderful shot, and he's a rabid Star Wars fan, and there's a great shot of him when the Nationals won the pennant against the Cardinals in the NLCS in 2019, and they were doing some sort of live reporting from MLB Network from Nationals Park. And while they're doing it, Sean Doolittle basically, photobombs it, swinging a lightsaber around like he's a crazed Jedi. He's a very funny person, very charitable, did a lot of work to promoting literacy during COVID. He and Erin did a lot of work there. He and Erin did a lot of work for veterans coming home from war and making sure that they were not being hoodwinked by predatory lenders, making sure and setting up homes and affordable housing for people who served our country. Something that, by the way, this isn't even political. If you served our country, you should have a place to live. That should be part of the cost of battle. If you served our country in a foreign war and you come back, you should have a place to live. You've earned it. I mean, that should be part of the social contract that we have. If you have a problem with that, don't bother writing me. I don't want to hear from you. Also, Sean and Erin set up the first Pride Night that they had in Oakland, which was not unanimously loved by the public and by Major League Baseball, but they did it, and it was the right thing to do because baseball belongs to everybody. Belongs to whatever politicals. Are you conservative? Or are you liberal? Are you religious? Are you atheist? Are you of this group? Are you of that group? Are you straight? Are you part of the LGBTQ community? Whatever it is, baseball belongs to everybody. That's one of the great things about it. And to have a Pride Night just proves it and showed it. And it was a great success. And you're starting to see other teams have followed their lead. So both he and his wife, Erin, are two people who really put their money where their mouths were. He walked the walk, he talked the talk, and did so with humor, with grace, with affability, and some big moments on the field. And a couple really funny appearances on the Old Sully Baseball podcast, which I will repost those episodes on the Twitter handle on the Locked On MLB and Sully Baseball feeds on Twitter, or whatever the heck Twitter is called now. I have one other shout out to give. I was originally going to go to an A's game this weekend, but instead I went last weekend just for family reasons. But a fellow by the name of Sean Watson has my tickets. So Sean, have fun at the A's game on Sunday. Hopefully it's not the final ever A's game ever played in Oakland. So it's going to be a crazy weekend of baseball games, and I may do this is a Saturday show. I may do a Sunday show. But let's do the trivia question. And it has to do with the Padres, it has to do with the Rockies in game 163 in 2007. In that famous game, we all remember that the Rockies rallied in the bottom of the 13th inning and the phantom slide by Matt Holliday after Trevor Hoffman blew the game. But the Padres in the top of the 13th inning took the lead. A home run was hit by a San Diego Padre that briefly gave the Padres the lead, and they sent their Hall of Fame closer in to close out the wild card, and the Rockies' wild finish would have been almost instantly forgotten. The trivia question is this: what Padre hit the home run that briefly gave them the lead in game 163 in 2007? Write the answers down here on YouTube, or send it to Sully Baseball on Twitter, Sully Baseball Podcast on Instagram, or Locked On MLB Pods on Twitter and on Instagram. Saluting Sean Doolittle's wonderful career, wondering what the A's were thinking, and loving how tight these races are as we wind them down. This has been Locked On MLB for Saturday, the 23rd day of September, 2023. I am your host, Paul Francis Sullivan. Please call me Sully.